Вот 13 часов, пора начинать.
So it's 1300, time to start. I would like to welcome you to this session of the Moscow Urban Forum, Quality of the Urban Realm, the Role of Architecture and the Architect. We managed to invite a great deal of speakers, panelists, and experts. I would like to introduce them. My name is Bart Goldhorn. To the left, we see Sergei Kuznetsov, Chief Architect of Moscow, First Deputy Chairman of the Committee of Architecture and Urban Development of the City of Moscow. Next to him, we see Pavel Yurievich Andreev, President of the Moscow Chamber of Architects. Then we have Grigory Isakovich Revzin, partner of Design Bureau Strelka, professor of the Higher School of Urban Studies at the Higher School of Economics. Our panelists include Lucy Musgrave, director of the Company of Public and City Design Publica, UK, Andrei Vladimirovich Bokov, president of the Russian Union of Architects, and Varvara Vladimirovna Melnikova, director of the Institute of Media of Architecture and Design Strelka. The first row experts include Vicente Goalar from Barcelona, Chief Architect of the City Council, Director of the Department of Urban Environment of the Mayor's Office of the City of Barcelona, Spain. Van Hui, partner establisher of the Architectural Bureau, Urbanus Architecture and Design, experts in the area of integrated urban area development, China. Marianne Loof, architect, urban developer, partner of Lefs Architecten Bureau, the Netherlands. Erkan Medatovich Kagarov, art director of Artem Lebedev Studio. Ilya Vladimirovich Mukosey, architect, co-owner of the architectural design studio Plan Air. Boris Yevgenievich Pasternak, chief architect of the Center of Historic and Urban Development Research. Mikhail Arkadievich Pasokhin, no, he's absent. Hans Stiemann, member of the Architectural Council of the City of Moscow and previously chief architect of Berlin. So a broad composition of participants, and I think the topic merits this representation, the quality of the urban realm, the role of architecture and the architect. Currently, we are seeing we're witnessing a very interesting period in Russia, in architecture and urban development area, if we may use the words which used to be used before. So we're moving from quantity to quality. If in the past the question was how we could build lots of houses, lots of housing developments, even though this issue is still on the agenda, now people are more focusing on the quality of housing and the quality of residential buildings. This issue is quite urgent, not only in Moscow, Russia, but also in other places. In the Netherlands, for example, this transition was quite pronounced in the late 80s when the state started promoting and encouraging architectural development quite consciously because the state deemed it important to improve the quality of cities. And architecture was deemed the most public form of arts, the form of arts that everybody runs into on a daily basis. That's why the Ministry of Culture and Urban Development set up a program to promote architectural development. This worked well. After that, the Dutch architecture reached really high level. In addition to that, Dutch cities also underwent transformation. I see that similar events are happening, similar things are happening in Moscow. This topic is already on the agenda of the present event, and it actually it's become dominant on the agenda of the Urban Forum. I remember quite clearly 8 years ago at the Moscow Architectural Biennale, the urban realm, the urban environment topic was raised for the first time. And I remember when the journalists asked the question, the organizers, it's not our topic, it's never going to happen in Moscow. And as you can see now, it's coming to the fore, it's becoming a very pressing, burning topic, and everybody's talking about it. We have 3 reports today. Sergei Olegovich Kuznetsov, Pavel Yuryevich Andreev, and our third rapporteur, our third speaker, will be Mr. Revzin. So I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Kuznetsov, Chief Architect of the City of Moscow. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, colleagues. Shall I flip through the pages myself? Okay. How much time do I have? 10 minutes? Okay, I'll try to stick to 10 minutes. My report is first to go. I would like to start with the issues, with the background of work with which myself and the new team of Moscom Architektura, we started out 2 years ago. And the first slide shows very briefly the issues that we had to face 2 years ago, and what we had to do, things we had to resolve as a matter of first priority to improve the quality of architecture. So the idea at the bottom of the page, as you can see, that given the huge investments in construction, in real estate, Moscow, unfortunately, had very few noticeable architectural projects, and we wanted to break it down into several factors, and it became clear to us that there was an issue related to the lack of dialogue between experts and the authorities. Remember the times when at the official architectural exhibitions, the architecture that was welcomed by the authorities and that was displayed at official exhibitions, and oftentimes architecture that was welcomed by the architects and the general public was published in specialized publications, and there was a difference between those two types of architecture. So the lack of cooperation, lack of dialogue was one of the key reasons. A generation gap, a lack of architects, the emergence of new waves of architects. We understood that there were not enough professional lifts that resulted in the inadequate number of architectural practices, inadequate number of projects, and the culture of construction works, a lack of promotion, the issues of regulation of architectural activities. There were a lot of questions, a lot of question marks. The legacy we received, we can't say that everything was bad, and we're not going to criticize our colleagues to paint it all in black. We can't say that it was all terrible, but clearly we wanted to move along, we wanted to develop. That's why we singled out the issues that were pressing at the beginning of our journey. So we started working, and our presentation shows the main landmarks. So the first step, so those were the first steps. We tried to start because we had a committee, and we thought that the committee, architectural committee, should become a driver behind the architectural development of Moscow. And Moscow, you know, we suspected that the rest of Russia will follow Moscow's example. So quite promptly, we started considering different architectural projects. Quite promptly, quite expeditiously, we managed to get involved into various events, business events. Actually, this is the first session which deals purely with architecture in all the history of the previous urban forums. Yesterday we had a session on tenders, and this time we're discussing purely architectural issues, which is a strong progress. Then we rejuvenated Architectural Council. The composition changed compared to the previous periods. Stiemann became the first foreign member of the Architectural Council of Moscow. So we try to bring together all modern contemporary expertise, to bring along all the experts that we could lay our hands on. And this Architectural Council became the driver of architectural development. And the program of publications, we launched that program. Our contacts with educational establishments, we supported younger generations, not only through publications, but also through integration into projects. We started with educational establishments, with educational programs and training programs. It was very important for us, translation of books, publication of books, by the leading educational establishments. It became part of our development program. Next steps were, as you can see, I'm not going to read it all. You know that we launched a tender practice. Several important high-level projects took place, and tenders for large projects were conducted. Exhibition activities, Museum of Architecture became a standing partner of the Moscow Architectural Council in promoting the new architectural ideology. So a lot of steps have been made in promoting the new institutions. I'm not going to elaborate on that. What has been done over this period? The numbers are on the rise, and the tender for Moscow River project, a high-profile project. As you see, the statistics, this practice was not only to promote, is gaining speed, and we're not initiating anymore. It's become self-sustaining, and it's being supported by the market participants, state corporations, and other stakeholders. Large projects, we held tenders for larger and smaller projects, and following the tenders, of course, the issue is to implement what has been decided. And what we did a year ago, it's at the implementation stage. Zaryadye Park, the National Contemporary Art Center, all these projects are under development, and we collected experts' opinions, and now it's being implemented. A few more points. Since we're pressed for time, I'm not going to read all of them. We are stepping up our activities in the public realm, in the public domain. We are promoting, popularizing the agenda of architectural development, architectural program. So promoting that agenda among the public at large is very important. Regulatory instruments. The government issued a decree on the Architectural and Urban Planning Solution Certificate. So we received a clear instrument to control the quality of architectural developments. It's a unique experience for Russia because in other cities it doesn't exist. So now nowadays Russia, through the instruments of the Architectural Council, can have ways to regulate and control the quality of architectural projects. We have 38 projects that have been considered, and several projects have been sent to the tenders, and we received quite high outcomes, quite high results. For example, Hammer and Sickle plant, a large territory, large area. It was submitted to the Architectural Council, and then on to the tender procedures. We have almost 1,500 projects. 1,500 projects have been considered, have been reviewed. Our experts have control of over the final product, and the likelihood of failures of bad projects is almost minimal. This map shows the key sites, the key areas, the things which are under development now. And people who are here, they are aware of the latest developments in the architecture, and it's being implemented, this map shows. So the whole Moscow is covered by this project. Just several examples for you in conclusion, what we have managed to accomplish with the use of the arsenal of tools. So these are the projects which are being constructed: the Khadinsky Field Park, the Zaryadye Park, which is at the construction stage right now, and it follows the project which was approved, which conducted the tendering procedure. Industrial area ZIL is also being developed according to the concept. Then Moscow River area, Rublevo-Arkhangelskaya territories, World Bank is in charge of that, and our colleagues from Strelka Bureau, Design Bureau, they were involved in this work. Next, a few words about that. It's not only so much a matter of the quality of the landmark projects, but the quality of mass projects, and this practice and the polemics around architecture is seen in the mass construction. We are building mass buildings. We're building social infrastructure of very high quality, something we couldn't dream of before. We renewed our metro development program. We already have a new metro stop that has been designed, and we're going to approve it soon. So we're just flipping through the pictures. These are the facilities, the properties that we commissioned in Moscow. These are the most trivial facilities, schools, kindergartens. People complained that they were uniform, that they were too bland. Now you can see the new projects which stand out. The simplest facilities have become really unique. So we are introducing the ideology, as Bart said in his introductory remarks, that architecture is the most public form of arts. We are introducing it into everyday life, and a lot of work is being done, and we are building projects of a completely new level, at a completely new level of completely new quality. Again, I know we're pressed for time. I'll try to wrap up my presentation as soon as possible. So, in conclusion, clearly, we should not be self-complacent. We understand there's still lots to be done, but over the last 2.5 years that we've been doing this, I think the road, the path we've outlined for ourselves is quite natural. And architecture's role has become more important. I think that's part of we can be complimented with this. I have a brief question. We saw in the tender section, the tenders, the projects are very well known. But for the schools and kindergartens, do you also have tender procedures? No. It's one of the open questions. It's very difficult to apply tender procedures to such small projects. Our law does not allow for this. Every time we have to micromanage it. Still, the fact that many projects were done by the kids, by the guys, that we noticed, that we saw at other projects, such as the Russian Nature project by Morton, or tender for Triumphal Square Julia, standing in the last row, she was actively involved, or the project to modernize DSK. DSK and the new series of mass construction buildings. We are working with them on other projects as well. So it's the direct consequence of the research that we had. So it's selecting mechanism. Yes, thank you so much. Now I'd like to give the floor to Pavel Andreev, who is developing the licensing system, if I'm not mistaken.
Добрый день.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shall I speak closer to the microphone? Yes, you need to speak closer to the microphone. Congratulations, especially congratulate the guests of this event with the winter that has come to us. Moscow is white again, and winter has given us some additional beauty thanks to the organizer of the tender, Mr. Goldhorn, who within the framework of this very specific topic of urban forum and urbanism has found the time and gave enough time and attention to the problems of organizing of a truly architectural work. For sure, it's clear to many of our colleagues, to our guests, but we may not know about it all that much, and we have a way in front of us, a road to understand our place in the structure of the culture of the country, the culture of our profession in the construction business. It's not a secret that an architect, as a creative person, in the process of our socialistic past, first he was under this burden of iron reinforced concrete residential construction. We had a lot of creative unions. They were quite serious. They were almost like trade unions, and we were under the auspices of the contractor, and we belonged to the trade union of builders, constructors. We were kind of under them and under others, and now we have to separate ourselves from this mass, from this uniform mass. We have to stand out. We have to declare our rights and our importance in this process. I'm trying to flip through my slides, and it does not work. I cannot see really what's written here. I will try to remember what it says. The creative position of architects was sort of like a club, which allowed them to have a common base. We were all spread out within the Soviet Union system of civil engineering and construction. We had all sorts of institutions there, city design organizations, like we have MOS Project and LEN Project, are the remnants of them. I'm not sure if they still exist, and industrial design organizations that designed big technological facilities. This entire system was lost during the perestroika, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And now we are an open field, and now we have to interact somehow with those foreign structures that unite our colleagues. It's just sort of order of architects or chambers of architects and so on. And now we have this task, quite serious task of uniting the architects based on private individuals and not on the basis of legal entities, as we have this law on self-regulating organizations. We are not present in the legal field. Our law on architectural activities is imperfect, and we want to be seen by our partners as professionals and carriers of information. With this purpose in mind, 2 years ago, within the framework of the Congress of Architects and Union of Architects, we created the National Chamber of Architects, presided by Andrei Bokov, sitting in front of you, and 9 interregional organizations that follow the administrative structure of our country, as we have those federal districts. Now we have the preliminary version of our website of the Moscow Chamber of Architects, and you can get this information from that website. Here we show how we have this structure and this division. It can be finer, smaller, but we want to unify our standards of professional activities. We want to be responsible for qualification of specialists and professionals, and we want to organize supplemental professional education, which is really important to support our practical work. And we have universal human goals, protection of interests of the profession, improving rules of the game, and improving the quality of service to be clear and understood for the domestic market and for the society here. We are public, we are open as a chamber, and we here have this register of Russian architects, this list. We want to register all architects and they may include information about them as much as they think it's possible. And in accordance with Bologna requirements from bachelor, 4 years, master's degree for a couple of years, then internship for a couple of years, depending on the desire of the person, whether they want to get the certificate or diploma, qualification certificate, and the right to get the personal seal like doctors and notaries have. They seal with their seal the quality of their product. It's not just a physical movement of stamping that stamp or seal, but it's your personal professional responsibility. As many foreigners do, we suggest the 4 categories of specialists: urban developer, or urbanist, as we say, an architect, landscape architect, interior design, and until recently we had a category of restoration, but now they are in their own independent field, the restoration workers. And now this is how the main page of architect to register looks like. We are going to improve it, and we will move from the shadow to the sun, and this is a sample of a personal cabinet, or this information about this particular professional, and this will become a substitution of their personal website, or could become a contact bridge between authorities, the client, and so on, and the architect. And it's all quite clear. And supplemental education, continuous supplemental education, which is required by any professional, it has to be monitored in the register. It has to be subdivided into 2 parts: the practical things that we show and theory. Especially during our time, this is a very important position. We are living in the ever-improving legislative field, labor legislation, and when an architect does not know those things, it puts him into a vulnerable position. To avoid that, we really need that system. And now, here's my question: how the Chamber of Architects, or the National Chamber of Architects, unfortunately we have no right to call ourselves the Russian Chamber of Architects. According to our laws, we have to have a certain history for that, have a certain number of branches, and then we'll be able to use the word Russian in our name and in our abbreviation. No substitution of functions happen, but the chamber is that basic foundation that unites professionals thanks to the knowledge of the subject, to the knowledge of our skill, of our profession. And the third position, as I said, bachelor's program, master's program, register, and the chamber. If we move from the skill to the category of art, then it's that cohort of people and architects who, thanks to their experience and professional respect, may influence the national level trends for the national architecture. This is the elite that we knew when we graduated from our universities, represented by famous names of pre-war and post-war architecture, those last names that represented that kind of bridge between classic trends and principles of the classic architectural school. And now, thanks to, or rather, that's something that was lost in the course of a couple of previous decades. This is a public or civil organization that unites people who are all in the sphere of architectural activities, not just practitioners, but also teachers and architectural critics and so on. Most respected and renowned people form the top of the pyramid, Academy of Architecture, and they are financed by the government, and they influence the state-level policy. If the Union of Architects is a free expression of the will without coats and ties, our Academy members, they converse and interact with the political elite and at the official level, and they can do it actively for the benefit of the profession. Okay. 2 minutes left. Okay. Here we show the range that we think that the circle that the architect has to go through before they give this desired certificate, if they need it. But at the same time, the first 3 boxes can show you a brief way. If you don't need that, if you don't have such ambitions to sign your designs, your projects, and have your own seal or stamp, you can go through a smaller circle. You can be an employee, a hired person, which is also quite respected. But I am going to skip a couple of points, but 4 circles here show the interaction between the National Chamber of Architects, the Union of Architects, the Academy of Architecture, and the National Union of Designers that respect the certificate issued by the Qualification Commission of the Chamber. We are all interacting with one another, and we each perform our important mission. 2 more positions here, something that concerns us. We compare the procedure of design work and the stages of design work, and we look at foreign experience. Our design today in terms of stages does not match the design work. Sometimes it complicates the project or design, or at the stage of working documentation, it contradicts some of the interests of the contractor. And now, the last point: for transparent and comfortable work in the market, we need to improve and monitor the unified system of calculating our prices, standard document that would be revised every year and monitored every year, so that the expert review could not tell us that we didn't see that, this, or something else. And I am a little bit nervous because I'm in a hurry. And of course, the improvement of the tender system, something that Mr. Kuznetsov spoke about. We need to create a system of architectural tenders on a larger scale, and without tenders focusing on price and time period. And they are very bad in terms of original documentation. The chamber is ready and will support any tender activity so that the architectural creativity and design services could be on the one hand together, but still be viewed as something separate. And finally, let me show you this slide, and thank you for your attention. I'd like to thank the organizers for finding time to pay attention to these problems, and you are all invited to participate in our activities. I have a question to you as well. How do you make this kind of decision? Whom you consider to be the elite of the architectural circles, and who the market decides? I may have not explained my point clearly here. The chamber unites architects who want to be involved in practical activities. The Union of Architects is a civil organization that unites all architects and those who are not architects, but who are somehow connected with architecture. They are much more open. According to our idea, membership is voluntary, but it's mandatory for architects who want to have private professional practice. And if they want, they may join you, not necessarily Russian citizens or residents. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And now let's move on to the next speaker, Grigory Revzin. You may have the floor. Good afternoon. I am a historian of architecture. I styled my presentation according to the styles of 1930s. This is my presentation, but please view it with irony. Dear comrades, 4 years ago, Sergei Sobyanin was invited to rule, and since that we have these forums with a lot of experts where we discuss the trends for modern metropolises. And among all those discussions about bicycle lanes, public spaces, anti-cafes, and there is this one marginal issue, architecture, that we are, as an architectural critic, I'm concerned with that. How interesting facilities were built in those 4 years, but nothing was built. This is my answer. In those 4 years, no buildings were built that would be valuable in terms of criticism. That's why criticism turns into self-criticism. If I exaggerate only a little bit, of course, some valuable buildings were built. Dominion Tower, and this is the early project of this well-known grandmother. Mikhail Filippov finished the Italian Quarter at Novoslobodskaya. This is the front row thing. Sergei Chobin and Sergei Kuznetsov built another building in one of the alleys. It's a great building, but these are just shades, and these projects are from the end of 2000s. Plotkin finished the business center, and it's early Lushkov times, and they just finished building it now. So only maybe 2 or 3 additional projects, and I will save time here. All these buildings of any significance, they were all approved before Sergei Semyanin came to the mayor's position. No projects that would be drawn, approved, and built under him if we have these partisan actions. And construction was not cancelled. Architecture was cancelled. they build a lot. Mr. Husnulin wants to reach 8 million square meters, including 3 million square meters of residential. Under Lushkov, they built 5 million. This is the residential area for several 100,000 people. This is an entire city. Who designs that? We have no idea. This is no architecture. They want to build 225 transportation hubs or nodes. These are very complicated systems that should bring Moscow to another technological level. But they are not connected with architecture. They are done somehow else. We can continue the same about metro. 4 years of Mr. Sobyanin is the loss of architecture. Lushkov architecture was provincial and barbaric towards history and so on, and it was all there. But at least we had some kind of architecture, and Lushkov Moscow is different from post-Soviet or late Soviet ones, when we had no architecture with the exception of Communist Party buildings and some marginal projects for libraries and kindergartens. Now we're back to the Soviet style of production of the city. Millions of residential square meters without any name or personal fames. How did it happen? Several trams, Mr. Husnulin and Mr. Sobyanin, we can understand them. Lushkov architecture, one of the ways of his collapse that undermined the confidence in architecture. We could not prove that we were not in favor of Lushkov, but rather against him. Artnadzor and the media convinced people that architects were destroying the national legacy. The global crisis of 2008 turned the cities from attractions to public spaces, and now it's no longer Moscow architecture, but a facility of utilities. We spend millions of dollars for the public space. This is the most obvious thing that we have later. We have urbanists there, but no architectural work there at all. The elite demand for architecture disappeared. Our clients moved from Ostashchenko to London, and mass-style residential areas is not the area of our work. But with all these problems, let me draw your attention to another problem that we initiated ourselves. I'm talking about tenders as the main way of producing architecture. I was a great enthusiasm of that.
I actually promoted those competitions before. I'm sorry, comrades, that was my mistake. I would like to self-incriminate. So, it was a presidential order. Nothing has been done over the past year and a half. Our key advantage now is that we somehow very indirectly managed to enter into contract with Minproyektirovanie, Skolkovo, a tender for residential quarters. All projects are lying idle, and Dmitry Alexandrov is working, and it's unclear why we ran the tender. Tsaryov Sad tender, 5 winners. Nothing has been done over a year. 2 construction workers are doing something. Tender for new metro stops, 5 hours for professional jury to conduct a hearing, while the decision was already made through internet voting. And of course, the jury had to follow the decision of the voters. We can continue. There hasn't been a single project, a tender project, that has been implemented. We have, a Dutch proverb: when a fool shears a pig, a lot of squealing, a very little fur. So that is what is happening in this area. We need to protect ourselves from the diktat of construction workers, to overcome bureaucracy. All these things have been written about many times in different books, but there are things which have not been written in the books and which are key for tender design. Our Russian experience very important for the global experience. First of all, legislative field and the application of laws. If it happens that architectural tender project is not approved and the law requires it to be changed, so the tender is an imitation, then the state contractor, the state client client's responsibility. State clients love such projects because they're relieved of responsibilities. Tender program. It's unclear how people get paid for putting together programs. So people write it for free, so that as we start debating the projects, it becomes clear what we're discussing. So it makes the whole process very interesting. And at the end of the tender, it's still unclear what we wanted to get. I'm skipping some points to save on time. We need some precondition of the professional community, some ability to accept the results of tenders. I've never seen a tender after which the stakeholders agreed and went along with the decision made. And only complete idiot can become a member of the jury of such tender procedures. I'm one of them. Tenders are inefficient without the minimal professional ethics. We haven't seen a single tender procedure following which, after the enunciation of the results, the architects wouldn't complain about the end product. Mr. Bukov criticized Strechikov Gallery. Mr. Masokhin criticized Zaryadye. Other people criticized the judicial quarter, and these are the most renowned architects of Moscow, but they follow examples of their Western peers. Peter Zeuter, for example, who was chairman of the jury for the Perm Museum tender, he said that he would be the best person to who should be commissioned to accomplish that project. And this, unfortunately, these are the preconditions for the tender procedures to work as an institution. I would like to confess, I think that we should abolish architectural tenders. It's similar to teaching man-eating people to memorize Declaration of Human Rights. I see no way to return architecture, to bring architecture back to Moscow. We need to find an oligarch or an official and to make him a leader of the architects. He can be made an honorary chairman of the union, of the council, of the academy, whatever. That's how we saved football, ice skating, fighter jets. That's the only way to save architecture. That's the country we're living in. So there is no other way for us to save architecture. So personalities will save architecture. So that personality should have access to high places. It's a political issue. It's an important issue. And architects are insignificant. They're really the 10th in order. We need once in a while to think of what's going to stay after all this, what's going to be after we're gone. Architecture is an instrument to think of the time frames which exceed an electoral cycle. That's why, please, Maxim Dunaevich, Petr Pavlovich, please introduce an architect, Sergei Lizovich, into the council, because we don't understand how we can respect architects, because there hasn't been a single landmark building built over the past 4 years. Architects are called a gang of facade builders, because facade reflects what's behind it. And Sergei Olegovich, please, no more tender procedures. No more openness policy, regime of favoritism and complete disregard for moral principles. No open statements. Otherwise, it damages the reputation of architects. So we must agree that the future of architecture will be based on favoritism, smoke-filled room deals. That's the only way for us to have an architecture worthy of the capital city of this country. And that's how architecture will become the development driver. That's the only way for an architectural critic to survive in a city like Moscow. Thank you, Gregory. I didn't understand everything very quickly, but I think the general idea was quite clear. So the question is how to elect or to get that person, how to find that person who will be in charge of everything. How can we? Maybe the president should become chief architect. No? Well, in principle, Bart, these are medieval procedures. They're non-public. We will discuss it on the outskirts. I'll tell you on the outskirts. But we need to talk about the strategy, you know. May I, without permission, I would like to join in the discussion because we represent the same organization, Strelka Design Bureau. I fully agree with him that given the current administration system, architectural tenders make no sense. Why? Why not? I think that Grisha made quite a statement, and I think he said everything that could be said on this topic. There's not much to add. Mr. Andreev would like to join in. You know, what I've just said, it's a new format for me, so I'm an architect, I'm not a public speaker. We started building the chamber because it's not covered by law. It's absent in the law. But as the Roman law teaches us, first things spring up on their own and then they're codified in laws. That's what's happening. And this is the only way to pronounce our profession in the market, to state our profession in the market. Grigory resorted to self-flagellation and jokes by basically he made a point of saying that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed. Of course, it's good to have somebody who can make a decision, be it a person or a tender procedure. There should be some quality ensured. There are different ways to ensure that. There are different ways to license. Mr. Andreev thinks that licensing is one of the tools, one of the ways to, again, referring to the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands. I know that in the Netherlands, if somebody receives a degree from an architectural university, he can apply for a license at the registration chamber, and he will receive an architect's license. And this works in Holland. The question is, I would like to ask Mr. Bokov, who's also involved. Well, I must say that the things as described, they're not only in architecture, but in other areas such as urban development and residential construction. In those areas, oligarchs will not help. We'll need a more high-profile figure. So we forgot about the meaning of the transport carcass of the city. Without the transport carcass of the city, saving of water, of energy, conservation, a lack of culture of land use, it's a separate area. We don't have that, unfortunately. Housing, we continue building houses which were invented 70 years ago, apartment blocks, prefabricated. Half of the housing stock is bad, but we're still increasing it. There's a topic of infrastructure. These topics are all important. Well, it has something to do with environment, with the realm, and architects were involved in that. Architects were doing that. I think we must continue doing that. Now we're moving towards professional practice. All the things we talk about, social lifts, competitions, tenders, etc. That's all great. It used to be in the realm of Moscow Architectura. It used to be called strategy for the development of the city, urban development policy. It's an important topic which must be pursued. I agree that until and unless we have a strong message from the first person, from the chief person, we will not be able to tackle it. We don't have that position yet. We don't have that strong message. The fact that you're interfering with me is a striking example of that. The final thing about the chamber, there could be 5 ways to implement that model, to put it in practice without professional qualification. There can be no profession. Profession doesn't exist. It's clear. There are no other ways and means in the world. Because now we graduate bachelors and masters. We don't have engineers, and we must introduce that. So there are 5 different models, alternative. First one, we have no laws, there are no architects, no chamber. In that case, we have either migrant workers or foreigners who have those certificates. The second model, second option, it's existing in Belarus now, state licensing model, where Ministry of Construction and Regional Development issues certificates to people, to individuals. Then the third model, Ukrainian model, when architects receive the right to professional practice only once they become members of the professional union. The next model is the model which Pavel Yurievich referred to, when we have independent chamber. There are examples in Europe and quite numerous examples. And the final alternative, Armenian model, Spanish model, US model, UK model, where we have one professional community that issues certificates. They can be called an order of architects or union of architects. So there are 5 models. What's the likelihood? We can assign percentage weights to different models. The model which provides for administrative or entails administrative licensing, unfortunately at the present moment, based on the previous events, is most likely the Belarusian model, which is an existing that exists in Belarus, and is being actively debated within the customs union. The Union of Architects believe that it is the goal, it is the mission of the professional community. No official can make a decision whether we are up to the responsibilities that we're ready to assume or not. So it's up to the architectural community to decide on that. I have a question to Varvara Melnikova. You represent an educational establishment. To what extent education can resolve the issue of lacking professional skills and knowledge which are required for professional certification? I think that it's not going to solve it, because we're non-state educational establishment. I think that education in general, be it architectural or design education, its main goal is to raise the level of culture. If we change our cultural level, we stand a chance to see changes in the level of architecture. And I think that in Strelka, that's what you're doing. Yes, we're actively doing it. Okay, if we talk about project culture, we have a guests from UK, Lucy Musgrave. She is, as an architect, she deals with urban design, a situation when you don't have only a client that hires an architect. She also deals with urban development practice. I would like to ask her to share her experience with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I am going to do a short presentation. Closer to the microphone. Is this working? No? Yeah, okay. I'm going to make a short presentation about the situation in London. I'm actually not an architect, but I run a practice of urban designers, so we're going to be talking about urban design, I'm afraid, rather than architecture. But I'm going to be talking about a new cross-disciplinary practice that is happening in London. To start off with, I wanted to explain the London context to you. Richard Rogers, the architect, was asked to deliver a report on the state of British cities. It was called the Urban Task Force, and it was delivered in 1999 and 2000. The key headlines were that we must build on our brownfield land first, our land that has already been built on. We need to develop around transport, public transport infrastructure to intensify our cities, and we need to invest in the public realm. The previous mayor, Ken Livingstone, asked Richard Rogers, the architect, to come and make a manifestation of these principles in London for the new London plan when London got its government. This is the current transport system for London, which some of you may be familiar with our map. And this is the huge investment that is happening from the last mayor and the current mayor in a massive building of public transport infrastructure over the next 30 years. The Transport Authority in London is made a radical shift in that it is now not only interested in the movement of vehicles and people, but it is interested in place and users of all streets and spaces rather than just the private car. I'm sorry, the slides are not responding. Okay. Thank you. Sure. So the categorization of streets and spaces in London is now about all users, pedestrians and cyclists, and the significance of place is now part of the Transport Authority's world in terms of the specificity and the character of individual spaces. The team that Richard Rogers helped assemble of young architects for the mayor, the previous mayor, developed an all-London green grid to link together all of the green spaces of London for both biodiversity planning, but also for flood risk mitigation, and also that people could walk and cycle and find amenity in every neighbourhood of London. And the current mayor, Boris Johnson, has invested in the high streets of London in the outer boroughs. He's put £50 million into revitalising the high streets of London. And this is very important because we had some very devastating social unrest in 2011. There were riots across London that caused a huge amount of damage in these outer boroughs. So he put a further £70 million into these outer boroughs to radically change public transport, the public realm, and to help businesses revitalise themselves. This was done through a team of advisors and young architects in terms of art projects, new civic amenity on high streets, events and programs that would be held at different times of the year, new play infrastructure on high streets, and young designers and architects working to help businesses do new shop designs and to help businesses develop. This is the work of my company across London that we've been doing in the last 4 years. We're doing very detailed studies of neighbourhoods, and the people that we're doing it for are both landowners, developers, and the planning authorities themselves. The reason that this is happening in London is that all people, all occupiers of London, want to live in interesting neighbourhoods and therefore have a great interest in terms of character, identity, and amenity of all of the neighbourhoods in London. How we do this is that we survey those neighbourhoods and we look at the use and patterns of use. We see ourselves like investigative journalists and we look at the neighbourhood from every angle. And we're very interested in use because the land use of a neighbourhood is often quite fragile and some of it needs protecting in planning policy. We study everything from the pedestrian experience at different times of the day and night, and we constantly map the experiential, the great assets of our historic neighbourhoods and the new places in the city. So the services that we deliver, this is a new service, is about area-wide strategies for the landowners and the planning authorities. We integrate new master plans, pieces of city that are being built overnight in terms of connecting with the surrounding neighbourhoods, and we set the briefs for different spaces and streets, as well as setting the concept design, and this is happening across London. I'm going to give 3 very short examples of this work. Okay, fine. This is a piece of London, it's close to the centre of London called Victoria, where the developers owned a large piece of land and the planning authority were concerned that the developers were only interested in the corporate front door of those developments. And so the planning authority asked the developer Land Security to think about a district-wide strategy, a framework for planning that everybody could sign up to. So we set the materials for the ground plane. We set the projects over 20 years that this could be recognised by the planning authority, by the transport authority, by all of the neighbouring landowners and developers, and are therefore a shared vision. I can stop there, but I've got 2 very short examples if you wanted to see them. One more. Our expertise is to understand the assets in the surrounding neighbourhoods. So when we have a new piece of the city being built overnight, this is the Olympic Park on former industrial land, we can understand what are the strengths of the surrounding neighbourhoods, but also what the gaps and deficiencies are. So when the developer who bought the Athletes' Village wants to ensure that they are setting the right regeneration objectives with new infrastructure, that we can help them do that and set an estate-wide strategy that connects to the life of those surrounding neighbourhoods. I mentioned this project because it's about our river. London, in terms of centre of London, has also ignored, and this district of London, close to London's river, has been underperforming for many, many years. So we're in the process of setting a public realm strategy for all of the different authorities and landowners from Trafalgar Square to the Aldwych. That's about 40 interventions in this district, which is about the removal of the traffic gyratory, the creation of new routes, the creation of new public space. And we look, just like your Moscow Urban Forum, we're constantly sharing best practice in terms of how other cities are revitalising their riverfront for leisure and for amenity. And this is then the briefs that are set going forward in terms of where the traffic will be removed, how this will work going forward, and we do draw detailed briefs. I'll finish there, but the reason I think that I was asked to come was to say that there is a new form of practice happening in London which sits between architecture and planning, which is actually understanding a principle and research-led understanding of the assets of the neighbourhood to set the right briefs. And the reason that this is working is that the planners are demanding it, but the private developers and the landowners and the local communities are demanding it. So actually it speeds up the planning process, it provides a framework for decision making, and it's something that is going extremely well in terms of the regeneration of London. Thank you very much.
Да, мне кажется, этот пример покажет, что
This example is showing that the conclusions of Grigori, when he was so negative, it shows that the work on the city realm, on the urban realm, it's not only about buildings, it's the city realm, the urban realm. Let me also ask the Barcelona representatives. We all know that in Barcelona, in the 90s, they started this practice of changing urban realms, urban spaces with how was it financed and how it can work in the economic sense.
Again for the invitation. Yes, in Barcelona, in fact, in the 80s, was the moment when we passed from dictatorship to democracy. Then there was a new generation of politicians and architects that really decided to work together. So one crucial question is that the mayor really works very close with the chief architect in order to develop a vision. Because for us, the city is the physical structure that must promote the social interaction, the new economy, etc. So from that point of view, we are starting the 8 working in places, creating places, working with the public space. Today, I think mentioned very well that you are working in public space, and I think this is absolutely fundamental because your city, if not, is collapsed by the traffic, and then the big problem about cities is that sometimes you say something but you do the other thing, no? So from that point of view, the idea that you really focus on what you want to do, that this is what we did. We decided to start to work in public space, to start to use architecture. We don't look for icons. This was invented in Bilbao in the late 90s with Gehry, and then every city tried to have an icon. But we say that architecture should be in the middle class, should be everywhere, in every neighborhood, in every housing project, in every school, in any library. So this is where really city is built. And then sometimes you will have an icon. But you should start from it's like the sport. You need to make people playing, young people playing, and then you will have a good team. This is what we try to do with architecture. In Barcelona, all of this with finance, in fact, with public money. So that's why at the beginning there were many small projects, but then the people themselves were really convinced that this was the right direction. So what is important is that the people, the citizens, understand that all of this is for them, that they are not the tax payers, but they are really the users. They are the meaning for the work of the administration. So this is what we did, and right now we are in another level somehow. We are demolishing our highways. We are not building any more highways. We are really creating more. I mean, the idea of a city will change completely in the 21st century because it will be for the people and not for the cars. It will be more about the communities. We'll be moving more information using digital technologies, and the people will be moving less. So from that point of view, we need to rethink about how cities work. The future of the city is not a rich center and a poor periphery. The future of the city is a metropolis of neighborhoods. So from that point of view, the idea that we really start to invest everywhere with good quality of public space, with architecture, and also through education. We collaborate with our Mies van der Rohe, with the Strelka Institute, and also with our agency Barcelona Regional, with the City of Moscow. I think that the exchange information, exchange project is crucial. Also, our order of architects can collaborate with you, because I think that we live, as Mr. Barber said before, we live in a world of cities, and cities must work together. We must learn from each other, and this is what we can offer to you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. I have another question. Here in Moscow, it's not all that great with economy, and in Spain, after 2008, there were some problems. There was a difficult situation in the economy, especially in construction. How can the city, if there's not enough money, how can the city do those things? Where do you need to invest your money to improve the quality of your environment, of your realm?
You know, the traditional business of construction cities that are held by developers is based on this principle: build cheap, sell expensive, and run away. So it's a very simple way that then the city is thought for the developer, for the business of construction. And this is over. This is from the moment where the economy was about kind of a speculative economy. In the post-crisis, post-2008, post-fall of Lehman Brothers, our economy is about how to run business, how to invest and stay, how to put a lot of value in places, and then to run the economy based on this. So Barcelona, we are lucky because we are somehow we are a city that we are receiving investment. Many people are coming for the Mobile World Congress, for the Smart City Congress. We are having tourists, but also we are having a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups. We are developing the new economy of urban innovation, not the economy of urban speculation. This was the past. So from that point of view, this is how we can manage to keep investing, to keep transforming, because what is important is that it's not only the administration that invests in the city, it's the people, it's the companies, it's the citizens that really invest in the city.
Спасибо. У нас есть, ну, кроме
Besides investing to urban realms and education, there are other ways. We have this Holland guest from Holland. She is an architect, and she is also with the Department of Union of Architects, and she's kind of working together to improve with the government to improve the quality of environment. I wanted to ask her what other ways of improving urban environment, urban realm through architecture do you know?
Yes, of course. In Holland, as you mentioned earlier, there was this more like general. There was this more, like you mentioned earlier, in the 19th, the Dutch government started architectural policy, which was not about money so much, but about stimulating architecture and urbanism on every level, which was with developers, but also with council, with local architectural debate centers, with all kinds of awarenesses, as well in the work the government issued, but also in architectural stimulation programs on every level. And as you mentioned, I think the cities benefited from that greatly. But as we have moved on since the 19th, things have also changed in Holland, and this whole policy is now much more on a local level. But it's not in Holland. It's not so much to do about money, but about the awareness that the state of Dutch cities is much, the economic state as well, is much about the architectural and the urban value. So to invest in this is not only for cultural, but also for future and economic value of the city. So the awareness is the most important thing that the Dutch government is doing. And this has spread since the 19th from a general government to much more local awareness. And for most of the cities in Holland, it is now quite clear that investing and stimulating in the quality of urban realm from urbanism's landscape, infrastructure and architecture is not only a cultural necessity, but it's also an economic necessity that increases not only developers, but especially the people who live in the houses, who buy the houses, who live in the cities, because the cities, they have the future. And if the quality of the city is not up to the standard these people want, you will only build for 20 years maybe, but then people will leave their houses again searching for another better environment. So this kind of awareness that this is a long chain of practice. It starts with mass. Of course, it starts with morality, and then it starts with culture. Then it starts with the biggest scale, but it ends only at a smaller scale. So it's sort of a chain, and every person here, the same in our country, has a position in this chain, and you must focus on the biggest and on the smaller scale. But for the cities, I think for Moscow, the same, and for Amsterdam, it's not different. Is the awareness that that is not a choice; it is an absolute necessity for a city to think in this way.
Спасибо большое. Значит, пропаганда.
Thank you. That's so. What we need is propaganda, or promoting for the people to understand that. Okay, let me ask the floor, the audience to respond, and the tender system is quite interesting. Sergei Kuznetsov said how great it was with tenders, and Mr. Revzin, on the contrary, said everything was bad. I'm interested in what our public thinks about it. Tenders, are they good or bad? This practice that we have in Moscow in recent years, is it good or bad? Alexander Zinoviev from St. Petersburg. Thank you for the sober view on the practice of architectural tenders. But my question, since I'm from St. Petersburg and I do not know who is their chief feudal lord, but their team of architects had not changed for 10 years. For a young architect to get into their group, if you do not share their point of view, you will have to design small street vendors and kiosks and nothing more. What is the recipe for St. Petersburg? Alexander Brodsky dreams to design a small kiosk or a vendor with small shots of alcohol. Perhaps you go to Little Holland, and there in St. Petersburg, this Little Holland organization may help you improve professionally. I promise to organize a meeting between you and the president of the Union of Architects and the chief architect when they get one. Here's your specific answer. This is something we need.
Any further questions? Hello, Abdullayev Timur, Chief Architect of Yekaterinburg. Speaking about tender procedures, the general trend nowadays is to simplify administrative barriers at the approval stage, and any tender proposes additional barriers, and many developers start to speculate on this because we don't have a clear law that will make people design and build on the basis of tender procedures. So how do you manage to work so efficiently with developers in this area? Thank you, colleagues. I can't but notice the locutions of our colleague that it was a provocation. The main idea of that statement was to be thought-provoking, and I think that tender procedure, rather than creating a new barrier, it eliminates barriers because it offers a barrier-free approval mechanism. And our colleagues from Strelka are helping us to hone on the language of the regulations. The regulations haven't been approved yet. We're thankful to them. We've done a lot of good projects using those procedures. When you go against the grain, when the state is against you, and it says that the ways to choose, there's a price, there are terms, please make your choice, and you try to introduce another procedure that will stand between the documentation, approval procedure, and other processes. It appears that you creating another barrier, but we are prepared to introduce these rules for Moscow Architectura. We are ready to substitute subjective decisions by live people who are prone to mistakes. We cannot change the composition of the organizing committee every time. So the tender practice is more efficient because the selection every time, the selection of various representatives of professional community and investors' involvement in the selection of the project, I think he has that right alongside experts. This should become a norm. It should be a rule of the day. And we're ready to acknowledge this and to recognize this as the norm without any further debates. If all procedures are complied with, we understand that we're dealing with a professional team with high-level investors, and the investors involved in the selection process. And many investors come to us with asking us to run a tender procedure because they initiate tender procedures. For them, it's a way to eliminate barriers. We've found common ground with investors on this. As a follow-up remark, to safeguard my sort of a few words in favor of my position. We have many young people from Moscow in this hall who went through the Moscow practice, and that they're now working in the market thanks to that practice. I cannot agree with our colleague with his point that there are no landmark projects. The projects which have been implemented under the present team, those projects actually were initiated in 2004, 2005. So the time frame for the construction projects implementation in Moscow, unlike in US and Europe, are horrendous, horrendously long. And we must say that the time frame for landmark interesting projects are very lengthy. And if we look at it coldly, unemotionally, if we look at the Zaryadye project was finished last year until November 2013, and in the full absence of legal ways to contract a team. It's an open question. We're not hiding it, but we made a headway. Design work is underway. Construction works are underway. And I would like us to judge this project not at this stage, a year after its approval, but maybe once it's implemented. And then we can say whether it was a good or bad idea to run an international tender procedure. Everybody's waiting for the results. I'm waiting for the results. The fact that even large state-run projects, the judicial quarter that you refer to, the Parliamentarian Center in Moscow, State Center of Modern Art, the Tretyakov Gallery, jointly with Pushkin Museum, large state institutions, they are voluntarily, without any pressure applied to them, they accepted that instrument, that tool, as a way to choose an architect. If we wind back 5 years ago, they're saying now, okay, we want to use this procedure, maybe with mistakes. Would like to use that procedure to choose the people, to choose the architects, not for the officials who are trying to run the project, but for the sake of the broader community. So there are several arguments in favor of our position, so it's not all so bad. Thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, society has very short memory span. 5-10 years ago, everybody was dreaming about having normal tender procedures because it was very opaque, and nobody could see where the order came from and how the order landed, where it landed. So in other countries in the West, projects are also very lengthy. The implementation of projects is also very lengthy. So it's not an exception. What's happening in Russia is not exceptional. I think we've reached the end of our discussion, unfortunately. One more question. Okay, one more question. Good afternoon, Zaikin Alexander. I'm a sculptor. I'm a painter, sculptor. I would like to ask this question to Sergei. I'm interested to know to what extent whether sculpture is important to our city, given the well-developed infrastructure of parks, what we saw since the Soviet times, except for the monuments to Soviet figures, we haven't seen any new statues or anything. We haven't seen any new art objects similar to what's happening in Europe. For example, my works are displayed in galleries in Europe. It is possible. In Moscow, it is not possible. When we talk about state agencies, they refer to the lack of budgets, and they say that there's no a line in the budget for this. It's not really related to our topic, but because we are not so really involved in sculpture and art objects. But I can tell you that if you look at the project that we're conducting in partnership with the Department of Culture in Zaryadye Park, in Khadinsky Field Park, we invited them and they responded. For example, when it comes to street sculpture and reference. So we're thinking of some possibilities of sculptural objects in the new projects. But I cannot really, I'm not in the position to tell you whether it's been done or not, whether these proposals have been acted upon or not. As I said, we've reached the end of our session. I think a lot of interesting things have been mentioned. There's a licensing as a tool. We may ask ourselves whether it will improve the quality. It's an open question. We don't have time to discuss that question. You remember a question was asked on the use of architects, not only for the construction of buildings, but also for the creation of urban environment, which is also an architect's contribution to urban development. Even though we're not talking about large-scale construction, Mr. Revzin pointed out that there are some problems related to the implementation of projects. He compared present times to Lushkov's times. Well, we must confess that under Lushkov's mayorship, we didn't have very high-quality buildings either. So, and the final point, what's to be done? I think it was told us very clearly how we can work at the local level to promote architecture, to attract a lot of people in this project, in this process, so that people can appreciate architecture, so that the quality of architecture in our cities can be improved. Thank you.